Hi, this is Ed from 6 Plus Plus. Welcome back to episode 5 of You, Me, and the UKTC. This week I will be talking about Tear Down Their Icons, my absolute least favourite mission in the pack. Really glad that that one's back in. And also something I refer to as high roll plays, casino plays, the 1 in 10 play, whatever stupid gambling name you want to give it. But it's how I think about the game when I'm in a losing or a near losing position, and I look for what out is my opponent giving me? What risk can I take to try and turn a loss into a win? I think it's really important to think about this, especially at the end of a tournament. In theory, round 5 is your closest skill matchup. You've gone through the seeding in a way. You've lost the same amount of games as your opponent. You've won the same amount of games as your opponent, and it should be a nice tight game between the two of you. If you've done well, it might be the hardest game of the event for you as well, unless you've had an absolute drubbing at the hands of some really fantastically skilled player before that. But yeah, with the tournament fatigue people as get as well. At the end of round 5, you're the most tired. You're more likely to make mistakes. Your opponent is more likely to leave you little gaps that you can really take advantage of. They'll do something not maliciously, but they'll go, "Oh, I didn't see this play. I didn't anticipate you doing that," and that gives you a way back into the game potentially. So, what is the casino play? Before I go into that, actually, I think it's important to know what you want out of a tournament. Is it to cynically score as many ITC points as you can? Maybe you've set yourself a goal of, top 100 in the country, top 100 in the world, top 50 in the world. Maybe you've set yourself a goal of, I want to do better than my last tournament. That might be you did 3-2 last tournament, and you'd be happy with another 3-2, but maybe you play better, you make less mistakes, you have tighter games, you have you'll have more fun. So it's important going into the event, knowing what you want to get out of that event, and also knowing what you want to get out of the game. Do you feel personally it's better to get a loss, but a high scoring loss, get 80 points? Maybe that puts you near the top of your bracket. So you're 3-1 going to the last round. You're going to lose the game potentially, but you think you can score an 80 and 85, and you can score quite highly up at the top of your bracket and get more ITC points than you would if you took a risky play and you got a 40 or a 50. Or do you think it's more important to give yourself a chance to win the game? Sure, most of the time you're not going to win the game. You're in a difficult position. You're finding that sort of little niche where you go, oh, if everything goes right for me and everything goes wrong for my opponent, I could win this game. I personally think that that's the better way to do it. I think it gives you more personal growth. The more you find these little niche plays, the more that you sort of implement them in your game before they become a do or die scenario. So things that I might have done a year ago, which was sort of just I'm going to lose this game, I need to all in. I might take a little aspect of that and put it into, turn to, oh, my opponent's managed to get a 12 on primary, I've mispositioned. This is going to be a problem for me because they're going second. They're going to really rack up the primary. What can I do to really try and limit them in the game? And you take little aspects from what you've done in previous games and adapt them into your game overall. In my opinion, I think taking the casino play is always better to do. You're probably going to get less points in an event. You'll be lower down the rankings, but you have a chance to win a game that is otherwise lost. And as I said before, you improve more as a player when you take that close loss. You find, you look for the little things that you could have done. You identify the tweaks that you could have made in your gameplay. I think that goes a lot further to scoring your points, especially at this point in the ITC season. We're only just in the year. So sure, cynically, you could get a higher scoring 3-2 at Manchester, but say you work to improve your game, maybe by the time, Nottingham rolls around in January, you're hitting the 4-1s, you're hitting the 5-0s, if you get a great run of opponents. So I think it's really, really important to look at what you can do to improve. And I think finding those niche plays is something that you can do. So here's a quick example of a game that I played into Dark Angels. If you followed me at all, you're probably sick of hearing me talk about Dark Angels, but this was a game that I played on mission 1 in the pack, which is priority targets. Unfortunately, my opponent won the roll-off, so he moved his objective down here. I mirrored. Then I moved. I moved his objective out here, and then he moved mine out into the open as well. So basically, I knew going into this game, unfortunately, he was going to win if I played a null game where I didn't put pressure on him, or just like a standard back and forth game. I was going to really struggle. I had a quick think. What can my opponent do? What will my opponent score if I don't stop him from scoring? So he took the, I'm forgetting the name of it now, the Dark Angel specific secondary where you get points for standing on an objective, stubborn defiance. So he took stubborn defiance. We talked about this and we came to the agreement that I don't think there's any way that I can stop him from scoring that in normal play. I can't move enough breaches onto the point because he can just line the edges with his Terminators. He can have characters on the back as well, which make it very difficult for me to, even if I kill the Terminators on the point, he can have characters holding it for the full game, so he gets probably the full 15 on there. He also took Codex Warfare, which I think I could probably limit him to a 6. If I play really well, I can limit him to a 6. But if I come out to deal with him, he's probably scoring more on that. So it's a trade-off there. He also took banners, and I said, if I don't do anything, he's getting a 10 on banners. I can probably take him off the banners in the middle, shoot him off, feed some Crude Hands into the middle. So I thought, realistically, even if he just holds 8 and 8, 8, 2 objectives, and he gets 3 points for holding the priority, which is super easy for him to do as a tanky army. He's getting 11 points on primary every turn. He's getting 44. He's going to get 10 points on banners. He's going to get 15 on steadfast, stubborn defiance, and he's going to get 6 points on Codex Warfare. That's 90 points. I've lost the game. I can't threaten 90 points with Tau into this matchup. There's nothing that I can do there. So what can I do to disrupt him? So he went first. He moved out some blocks of 5 Terminators here. He moved some 3 bikes, the plasma bikes, up into this ruin. He had his 10 Terminators sat here, 10 Terminators sat here. He dropped some banners. He stood on the point. He defended it with a steadfast advance, for a stubborn defiance. Sorry, he had his characters here. He was setting up the game plan for the bog standard. I'm Dark Angels. I'm going to sit here. You come out in the open. I'm going to shoot you. If you come to deal with me, I'm going to hit you. You're probably not going to kill me. So coming into my turn, I realized I've got to do something absolutely drastic. So I was thinking, how can I prevent him from winning the game? So in my turn, I dropped the drones from my Cold Star because I found that there was a little gap here in his screening. Typically, when you screen turn 1, especially if you go first, you get quite lazy with it. You go, there's probably not going to be room for anything to come in because you don't need to. And you kind of more setting up your units for turn 2 when your opponent can deep strike stuff in. So he hadn't deliberately screened out his models. I hadn't even thought of pre-measuring it for him until we got into the game, and I was looking, I was like, oh, maybe there's a spot over here I can drop a Cold Star. So I redeployed the Cold Star using the datasheet ability where it can go up into reserves and come back down on the same turn. And my plan with the Cold Star was to deal with the 2 characters he had sat down here. One was the character that was giving the -1 damage to the Terminators nearby, and the other one, I believe, was Lazarus as well. And I just wanted to get them off the point and really make it hard for him to score Stubborn Defiance. Over here, I moved the Crisis Suits up a little bit past here so that they could shoot the 5 Terminators, and then I was going to fire and fade them back into what was a relatively safe position. We measured it out, and it looked like, given my access to the Tau stratagem for -2 to charge, he wasn't going to be able to charge me with these Terminators. He wasn't going to be able to charge me with these Terminators. He could bring the characters over here. He had a couple of Talon Masters. He could bring them up here and interact with me, but I wasn't too worried about that. The Crisis Brick is relatively tough, at least at the start of the game before you kill all its defenses. But also this squad of plasma bikes as well. They were going to be a problem. So I brought them out here with the plan of killing this full block of Terminators. And I brought these 2 Crises up here with the plan of killing these 3 bikes. And this plan was going to give me a potential to limit him to significantly less scoring. However, it requires everything to go right. It didn't in the game. I'm really glad we played it out. It was good, a good learning experience. But what ended up happening is if I'd killed here, killed one in the shooting phase, charged in with a cold star, got the 9-inch charge, killed the other one, that would have significantly limited his scoring. I could probably drop him to 32 primary potentially. Turn 2, he's definitely getting the 8 or the 11 because he's going to be holding this objective at the end of his turn. Turn 3, he's probably getting the 11 as well. But then turn 4, I've probably wiped off this Terminator block and thinned out up here or thinned out in the middle. I might be able to keep him to a 4. The next turn, I might even be able to deny him the 4, depending on how my game's going. I've got a little bit of OBSEC in there. I can do some sneaky tricks. Secondary-wise, I can really screw a secondary. Potentially, I could drop him to only 3 points on Stubborn Defiance, depending on how well I can screen him out here. Maybe he gets a little bit more and moves the Terminators on, but it doesn't do too much. Banners, I can probably limit him to 6 or 7 points in the banners. This is a game state that I can win in. I can get more than 61 points playing Tau. That's absolutely not a problem. So it didn't go that way. I killed 1 bike. I didn't kill the Terminators, which was a real problem because then they just came up and charged me. I did kill one of the Terminators, one of the characters over here in the shooting phase. I didn't make the charge, so I didn't get to kill the second one. And then the next turn actually went in my favor. My opponent didn't roll as hot as he needed to. He didn't even roll average. I made some nice saves and I was able to have a bit of a game into it. But it did mean that he still won heavily. I lost. I got 60, 65 points, something along those lines. But I had given myself a potential way to win the game in which there was no way I was going to win the game otherwise, unless I somehow rolled every wound, even with my rerolls. That's not going to happen. And he failed every save, and I just somehow kill 34 Terminators in a way that this list shouldn't be able to. So tear down their icons. Tear down their icons is pretty straightforward. It's hold 1, hold 2, hold more. There is an action to plant and defuse bombs. It's better if you're OBSEC, but you can still do it if you're not. You can do it if you're not infantry. So Crew Hounds can do it. Armigers can do it. Crutox Riders can do it. I have one of those on my list. Looking forward to planting bombs at the end of the event with a 25-point model. And it is a 4-point score on your primary for each bomb that you have on the board at the end of the game. As I say, if it's OBSEC, it completes at the end of your turn. If you're not OBSEC, it completes at the start of your next command phase. It is one of those actions where you've got to expose yourself a little bit. You've got to take the incoming fire charges. So you've got to be careful with your positioning. Really think about what you can do to put them on. You can't put the bombs down on turn 5 unless it's an OBSEC unit. If you have OBSEC units alive on turn 5, more power to you. You're running a much safer list than I am, but you can defuse the bombs as well. You roll a die on a 4+, the unit manages to defuse them. You can't do it if there's units nearby, so it's quite easy to protect your own bombs if you want to. And you do add 3 to the roll if you're OBSEC, which makes it, funnily enough, significantly easier to defuse. I find it's easiest to try and deny my opponent scoring the bombs by placing them, but some armies can do it quite well. As I said, Armigers are actually quite nice at it because they drop the bomb at the end of the turn. Even if you kill them, it doesn't matter. So where do you want to think about putting bombs? Because that's the main gimmick of this map. The 3 spots that I find I typically place the bombs in: here in the middle of the board. If you have a forward deploy unit, something with a pre-game move, something that's just fast and can get from here to here and tuck in quite nicely, that's a fairly safe turn 1 bomb. It's also one that's quite risky for your opponent to defuse because you're probably wanting to play for the middle. So if they're spending their time trying to defuse bombs instead of doing anything useful, you're not too upset about that. You'll just, trade up on them, hopefully. Another easy one is over here, right down in the corner. And then the third is this little spot here, which is just 9 inches away. Those typically are the 3 easy ones to place. If you're playing a more aggressive army, if you're playing, Drakari, Yunari, some sort of janky elves, Gene Stealer cult, you can get really creative with where you want to drop your stuff because you'll be in your opponent's deployment zone from turn 1. But for those of us who are playing something a little bit slower and has to respect that the opponent does have models that we have to kill before we can walk past them, you're probably going to be playing a little triangle down here or maybe another one over here, something along those lines. This is a map which is really a conglomeration of all the stuff that I've talked about before. You can play it in a couple of different ways. You can look to play it a tight triangle up here, turn it into a hammer and anvil deployment. You've got good line of sight down this way. It makes it quite hard for your opponent to pressure here if you can walk up this way and shoot down there, or if you can, just stage up here and deal with them if you're playing a melee army. Or you can turn it into a longer triangle, turn it into a Dawn of War deployment. This is a great one to do if you've got a staging army. This little spot here is an absolute nightmare to dig units out of if your opponent doesn't, if you don't have the tools to come up, deal with what's behind this ruin, it will absolutely ruin your day. As you can see here, it is so well set up for staging. The only thing that I would say is this is, especially round 5, absolutely a map that you can really get lazy with your screening on. You want to have something down here, some model in here, about 10 inches away from the corner of the board. Make sure your opponent's not getting easy Alarus Terminator deep strikes in or whatever they've got. If you're playing against Gene Stealers, they're going to get in the back lines, so don't fret about it too much. But don't forget, don't leave a huge gap here when you're in your eagerness to hold the objective from behind terrain. So that's that. That is episode 5 of You, Me, and the UKTC. Thank you for watching along with me. Like I say, I'm really looking forward to seeing how people have done. Please do let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear if you feel that this has improved your game. If you think I'm an idiot, if you think I should stop doing videos, all of the above. And looking forward to seeing people in Manchester.